Hi, and welcome to part 8 of this PowerShell tutorial series on making graphical user interfaces with PowerShell. So as we've seen quite a while back, we've seen how to make graphic user interfaces using Visual Studio and then importing those with PowerShell. And we've done quite a few examples. And lately I've been taking a lot of video requests from the viewers. And I actually had Gyan, I think. I'm sorry if I did not say that properly at all. But Gyan had mentioned that he had a question on how to use like multiple windows in a form. So kind of like having one main window and then clicking a button and potentially spawning like another window. So kind of like having a parent form and then like a child form spawn off of that one. So I do have that tutorial here for you guys today. So we're going to be creating like a simple service manager. So again, it's a very, very simple example. We're going to have the main form, which is going to have a drop down. And then we are going to click on a button and it's going to open up some details about that service. And we're going to get the option to start, stop, or restart that service. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to open up Visual Studio. In our case, I'm using 2019 right now. I will be switching over to 2022 very soon, and I'll be showing you guys a video on how to do that upgrade. But it should be fairly similar, whichever version of Windows Visual Studio you guys are using. It just might look slightly different. So all we need to do is create a new project. And then as we know, all we really need from the Visual Studio is just that XAML code to create that graphical user interface form. And what we need to create is we need to create a Windows Forms app. Now, it doesn't matter if you pick the C# or Visual Basic, whichever one, WPF application, not Windows Form app. So you do need to create a WPF application. It does not matter if it is a C# or Visual Basic, whichever one works. So we're just going to pick the C# here for now. I'm not going to change the project name. I'm just going to keep it at the default since it really doesn't matter for us. So we're just going to create that project here. All right, we should get our window appearing here. And let me just zoom out here. This should be fairly easy to kind of see what I'm doing. If not, I might just switch where my camera is during the recording. So you're gonna see me looking over here. This is just my screen where I have the recording software here, just to make sure that you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So for the main window here, what I'm just gonna do right off the bat is I'm just gonna shrink it down a little bit. We don't really need a big window for the first part. I'm just gonna do something like this. You definitely want to give it enough space. So it's not all crammed in a little box. So the first thing we're going to want to put in here is we are just going to want to change the title. So I like to change that just right here. We could just do this. We're going to name it Service Inspector. I know that's kind of what we named our last one, but it's really going to be doing the same thing with some added functionality. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to put in is we're going to want to put in a combo box. So what I like to do is I like to just double click on it and it'll put it in there, and we could just resize the combo box as needed. So there we are. So we're just going to put it like right in the middle, or like right here, right above the middle. And I'm just going to stretch it out because some service names might be kind of long. And then the only other thing that we need here is going to be a button. And once again, we're just going to shrink that down. What I like to do is I like to just match it up with my drop-down box and just kind of size it properly. So everything just kind of matches up there. All right, and then the button, we're just going to put in for the content to get details with an exclamation mark. All right, so then the only two things that we really need to do in this case is going to be giving these two form elements a name, because if they don't have a name, we know that we can't generate a variable for them. And we need that variable in order to manipulate the data. So if it's a form element that doesn't require any type of manipulation, which we're actually going to add in. Actually, I kind of changed my mind here. We're also going to add a little label here. And once again, we're just going to shrink this label so it's not excessively big. Doesn't really need to go off the screen. Oh, you can just put it that big. Then the content for the label, we're just going to put service with a colon on it. I could actually, let me just shift this over here. When you're making a graphical user interface, you definitely want to make it like as user friendly as possible and as easy to understand what to do. I'm not really great at making very pretty user interfaces, so I do apologize if this isn't very nice. All right, so that should be good. So this is our main window. Now, as I said, like we have 3 controls on here. We have a label, which we won't modify, so I don't need to give it a name. But this drop down, I do need to give it a name. And the way that you would do that, just like in our other videos, there is a little name box here. And what I like to do, because we're going to have 2 forms in this case, and you guys probably remember I used to name this like DDL service, but because I know that we're going to have multiple forms on this, what I like to do is I like to name it just like form 1. You guys can give it better names. I'm just not very creative in my names. You guys can name it like main form or something, or form 1 if you guys like that name. And since we're only gonna have 2 forms, the naming convention probably doesn't really matter for us. So we're gonna name it form 1 underscore DDL service. And then our button, we are gonna name it form 1 underscore BTN get details. Let me just not get a typo in there. So this is going to be our first form, and then all we're going to need to do is do a file, and then we're going to do the save main window XAML as, and we are just going to save it as a XAML file. So I just have a folder here on my desktop, and we're going to name it main window 1, and it's going to be a XAML file. So we're just going to save that here. All right, so then the only other things that we really need to do is we can actually go ahead and delete this now and delete the button. We can keep our label because we can reuse this label later on. All right, so now we have our second window. So now, like as I said, we have a drop down. It's going to load in all the services. We're going to click a button, and then a second window is going to appear with some details. So the first thing that we're going to really want to show is the service name, because we want to confirm to the user what the service name is that's showing up here. So we're just going to make this a little bit bigger. We're going to bring in another label here. We're going to make this label kind of long. Now we are going to make another 2 labels. Now these labels are quite important because we're going to want to show the status of the service as well. So let's go ahead and let's just bring this to here, and I'm just going to put this to status right away. We're just going to shrink that down to what it needs to be. And then this one, we're going to line it up with the other one. Now I'm leaving the text here of label because you'll never see this anyways. When we spawn off the form, we're going to be editing these fields anyways. So you could just leave that there. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put, you really only need 3 buttons, which is going to be the start, stop, and restart buttons. But I'm actually going to add another button that just says close, which is going to give you an option to close the box. You could simply use the X on the window, but I'm just going to give that as an option to the user. So let's go ahead and let's bring in some buttons here, and let's just size them properly. So this is going to be the first button, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this button multiple times, so all the buttons are going to be the same size. And then our exit button is going to be right on the corner there. So this first button, we are going to put the content to start. This second button, we're going to do stop. And then the third one, we're going to do restart. And then the last one here, we're going to just do close. All right. Now we need to give, again, names to all the controls that we're going to be interacting with. So we have the first one here, which is this label for the service name. So I'm going to name this one form2 underscore LBL service. I'm going to do service name actually. Then the second label, we're going to do form2 underscore LBL service status. And then the buttons, we're going to do form2 underscore BTN start. Form2 underscore BTN stop. And then the restart is going to be form2 underscore BTN restart. And then the button for close is going to be form2 underscore BTN close. All right, so then we're going to do another file, and then we're going to do another save as, and we are just going to save this as main window 2. So this way we have 2 main windows now, which doesn't really make sense, but we have 2 separate files for our XAML. I just named them main window 1, main window 2. So let's go ahead and let's actually start getting into the PowerShell code. So I'm just going to minimize Visual Studio in case I need to go back in here and change some of the XAML that we have, because we can always access them here. So let's go ahead and let's just minimize that. And let's go into the PowerShell code here. So I just want to show you guys what my desktop right now looks like. So we have our desktop here. Let me just zoom in for you guys. So we have multiple forms, and then we have our 2 XAML files here. So this is really what we're going to be using. So let me just zoom back out here. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do, kind of like what we've done on all previous other videos, is add type. And then we're going to do the assembly name, which is going to be presentation framework. All right, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to copy all of that code that we used to use to generate the forms. So I'm not really going to go over that in this one. I'm going to be putting a link in the description down below to the first time that we've ever done this together, just so you guys can go in that one and see the more in-depth. This video is really just focusing on how we can create an application with two forms. So let's go ahead and let's just copy paste this here, and we're going to have to change our XAML file. So I'm going to go over the code. I'm just not typing it out live. So the first line is we set our XAML file. So let me just go ahead and grab that path here. So we're going to go desktop, multiple forms, and main window 1. So if you hold down shift and right click on it, you can do a copy as path and then simply copy that in there. And then what we're doing is we're just importing that XAML file, and we're doing some slight modifications to it, so we can actually put it into a XAML reader and create that window. And then we are going ahead and creating all the variables. And then what I did here is I'm naming my first form form1. So it is form1 here as well. So just make sure when you're creating your forms, make sure you're naming them form1 for the first one. And then when we create the second one, you'll see what we're doing for that one. So once we have all of that, what we can do is we can actually just run this here. Oh, we actually have some errors. Oh, and I typed in presentation framework incorrectly. Let's go ahead and let's just load that in here. So as you're going to see, nothing comes up. But what we can do now is if we go into var we can actually see that we have our form 1 btn get details and our form 1 ddl service. So we know that it works. It created the variables. So let's go ahead and let's load in our drop down. But first, what we can do is we can do a form1 dot show dialog, open and close parentheses, and then at the end we're just going to do a form1 dot close. So if we run this here, so as you can see, my window wasn't quite big enough. So all we can do here to simply fix this, because this does happen quite often, I find, when I try to do forms and I don't quite get the spacing just right. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift these up a little bit and save that. Now if we do this, see, it still does that, and I'm not too sure why. I've found that what really helps in that case is to actually just go ahead and change the height to, let's just do 250 manually. And then if we save that, I wonder if that's going to allow it to work. Just close the window that spawned off here. So that actually just made it worse. So 250 made it worse. So let's just do 300 here. Let's just shrink these back down. And then if we just run that here. So this is always the part that I definitely always struggle as making it actually look presentable. I don't know why, but I just cannot seem to make things that look very good for some reason. That has always been my main struggle. So let's go ahead and let's just try that. So I'm just going to try that. And if that doesn't really work out too well, as you guys know, it will still work. You might just have to adjust it, which is a little bit annoying, I do have to say. That's the only part that I really don't like about that. So let me just fix this up real quick, and I will be right back. All right, so I've got all that figured out. So what it ended up being was I didn't have any actual heights and widths set here. So they were all set to auto. So just make sure if you guys are creating a form, make sure that you turn the auto sizing off, because that might cause some issues for you guys. So I just wanted to mention that. So I did get that fixed up here. So what we can actually do is we can actually just set the height here. Let's just set that to 150. Actually, that's still pretty big. Let's do 125. That should be pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is set my grid to 125. Put all the stuff back here. So there's our, so now if we save that and then we go ahead and we come here, we can see that we do get our service and we can start picking it out. So this is perfect. So we have our window, our first window up and running. So that is great. So let's just close that and let's start loading in all the data that we need. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and load in all the services. So the simple way to do that is just by doing get service, and then we're going to pipe that to a for each object, and then in there we are going to do a form1 var form1 underscore DDL service, and we're going to do dot items dot add. Then in the add, we're going to use our piped in value and then do the name of it. And that should work here. We are missing, okay, don't need that. So that should load in everything here. So if we actually just go ahead and select it, we do have all of the services loaded into our dropdown now. Now the only thing we need to do is create a functionality for our button. So what we're going to want to do for the button is we're going to want to do a var underscore form1 underscore btn details dot add underscore click. Then in there, we are going to go ahead and do an open parentheses, open curly bracket, close parentheses. And then in here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create our second form. So the way that we're going to do that is I'm actually just going to copy paste this code here into our form and just tab that over and change this to main window 2. And then make sure that I rename the variables to form2. And then at the end here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a form2 dot show dialog. And then at the end here, we're going to add form2 dot close. All right, so that should be good. So let's go ahead and let's just run that here and see what happens. So we have our service drop down, and then when we click on get details, we do get our second window. Now, of course, our second window has the same issues with the auto values here. So let's go ahead and let's just stop that. And let's go back into our Visual Studio here. And we're just going to go into main window 2. So all I'm going to do is, so all the values are already here. So let me just actually zoom in here so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So right here, there's actually the values for width, which you're going to see it's set to auto, and then the height is also set to auto. So what we want to do is I just want to set this to 100, set this to 29, and I'll be doing that for each control here. So I just want to make sure that, and whatever they are set to is what I'm setting them to. So I'm not doing like any type of like sizing right now. Whatever it was set to is what I'm keeping it at. So then we have the buttons, that button's good, that button's good, that button's good, that button is good. So everything seems good here. And then 707 and 246. And 707, 246. All right, so if we save that here and we go back into our PowerShell window and we do the get detail, as you can see, everything looks pretty good. The close button might just be a little bit too close to the bottom. But besides that, everything looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and let's make sure that when we select our service here and we do get details, that everything gets populated in. So what we can do now is right before the form2.show dialog is where you're going to want to put all of those information. So let me actually just, I was zoomed in here, so let me just actually show you guys what I'm doing. So right now, all we want to do is make sure that when we select a service in here, that it actually appears in the second window, and we can actually make these buttons work. So right before our form2.show dialog, what we are going to want to do is we are going to want to load in firstly that service name. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a variable called service name, and we're going to set that equal to var form1.ddl service dot selected item. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a var underscore form2 underscore, and that was a LBL. That'll help if I just run this here. So if you ever want to load in your variables so they're just always there, you guys can just do that. Definitely makes it a lot easier. Var form2.service name, and then that's going to be .content, and we're going to set that equal to service name, and then we're going to do a var form2 LBL service status .content, and we're going to set that equal to get service of the service name, and then we're going to pipe that to a select object status, and then we're going to do a dot status here. All right, so now if we go ahead and we run this code now if we just pick my favorite service to look at is the spooler service. If we get the details on it, we can see the service name is spooler and the status is running. So now all we need to do is code these buttons. So let's go ahead and just close out of these here. And let's go ahead and let's add those functions. So let's do a var form2 underscore btn start dot add click, and then again open, and then close the curly and the round bracket. And then for the btn start, all we're going to do is get service name, and then we're going to pipe that to start service. And then all we want to do is update that service status label after. So all I do is I copy paste that, and then we just update the label altogether. So all we want to really do is we can actually just, for this one, simply copy this 2 more times, change the btn to btn stop, btn start to btn restart, and we could just do a restart service and stop service. And then the last button we can do is a var underscore form2 btn close dot add underscore click, open parentheses, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, close parentheses. And then we could just do a form2 dot close, and that is going to be it. So now if we actually go ahead and run this here, we are going to get our services. So let's pick our spooler service because that one is pretty safe to interact with. Get details. So now if we actually go ahead and click, let me just zoom in so you guys can actually see what's going on. So we can click on stop and the service is stopped. We click on restart, it'll go to running. We can go stop it again, we can start it, and then we can close the window and we can get the details on another one. So as you can see, this was a pretty easy project to do to get the 2 forms set up. One key note is to always put the other forms within the add click function of the button that calls that form. If you create the form outside of the function and then you close that window, that form is then going to be killed off, and since the code won't rerun to recreate it, it'll be lost. So always be sure to create that on the button click. So that's the major kind of gotcha that I found out when I was learning this. But besides that, that is pretty much it. Again, I'll be putting the description, some links in the description down below for the video of where I really went in depth in creating the graphic user interfaces. And I'll also actually upload this code to my GitHub with the two main windows. So you'll have access to the two XAML files that I've used and also this PowerShell code. So the link to the GitHub will be in the description as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that answered the question that you had, Gyan, and I hope I said that properly. But if you have any other questions, feel free to leave comments down below, and please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when the next video comes out. I'll see you on the next one.